this is just my message for anybody out there in a situation. Staying in a relationship is not sacred if you're already gone. Betrayal is not leaving. Betrayal is forgetting yourself. And we're going to go through that. Because you stayed not because it was sacred. You stayed because you were too tired to mourn. Because leaving would have felt like holding a funeral nobody else would have attended to. Right? Because starting over felt like dying and staying felt like sleep. You stayed because silence is familiar. Because you learned that endurance meant goodness. Because you were taught that leaving makes you the villain. Even if staying is just a slower way of disappearing. That's the whole thing about it. You end up thinking that loyalty is survival. You think that dragging a dead story behind you is proof of love. Right? Then you end up stitching a broken mirror together with your own blood as holiness. And the truth is really this. Staying in a graveyard does not bring anyone back to life. It doesn't. It doesn't. And you're allowed to leave what no longer blooms you. You're allowed to mourn a love that doesn't keep you breathing. You're allowed to lay down the performance of loyalty when your spirit is grasping for real air. You're allowed to outgrow promises that only thrive when you're shrinking. You don't owe your survival to a story that already forgot your name. And you don't have to martyr yourself to prove you loved. You don't have to stay that so that no one can accuse you of giving up. You don't have to carry the guilt of other people's loneliness on your back like a second skin. And the thing is, the real betrayal is not leaving. It's not. The real betrayal is abandoning yourself inside of a story where you're no longer allowed to breathe. The real betrayal is watching your own soul shrink inside of a room where you no longer even recognize the sound of your own joy. The real betrayal is calling sacrifice love because you were too afraid to call grief holy. And you can leave. You can. And still bless what you once built. You can mourn without burning yourself at the altar of loyalty. You can be faithful to the truth, even if it means walking away from the lie you once believed in. Right? Leaving is not the end of love. That's the point I'm getting at. Sometimes it's the beginning of memory healing itself. You're not a villain for choosing life over loyalty to a dying memory. That's what I'm trying to say. Because I was hearing comments like this, and it had me thinking, and I'm like, okay, there are things you can work through. I can agree. But sometimes working through something is self-separation. Right? Like it's bigger than how I would say, just staying and toughing it out. Because sacrifice doesn't equal love. Right? In parallel systems, this is one of the things we're going to cover at some point for sure. This is one of the ones called the thorn. And you start to see your relationship as a thorn. You have to perform, right, to look well, and even in the midst of your suffering. So relationships at their core are about two people functioning as mirrors and seeing each other deeper than anyone else could have. That's really the core. Right? That's why they say that God is in the midst of that. Because it's the depth. It's the mirroring. It's the eternity of reaching together to feel the truth that you two are supposed to be stepping through. Right? That kind of thing. So hope this gave some of my perspective on that, because it's an interesting discussion, and I think it matters.